Hey everybody, it is 3:30. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. My name is Andrew Richardson. I am the VP of Analytics and Marketing Science for Elite SEM. Thank you guys again for joining us today in the back corner, sleepy afternoon setting of the dark room. So I'll try and keep this lively. I do not like standing behind a podium, so I'm sorry if I get in your way, but I'm sorry, I can't stand still. It's just a little bit of who I am. So we're going to go through quite a few things today. I'm going to talk to you guys. There's some bright light for you. Welcome to that. Our agenda for today, just want to kind of level set on what we're going to end up talking about. A little bit about us, which is really the worst part of the presentation, so we'll get that out of the way quickly. Kind of setting the stage on why marketing data can suck. All of you guys in here, I'm going to assume have some understanding of marketing data, or marketers yourselves, or work in marketing data, and you'll know why some of this sucks, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the past and some of the things, mistakes that we've made at Elite, and some of the things that we've been trying to do for a number of years. Then we'll talk about kind of where we are today. I'm going to show you guys some stuff that we're doing within some of our reporting, get into Tableau Prep just a little bit, and talk to you how we leverage that and use Tableau Prep. Then we're going to talk about some of the things that we're trying to do or looking forward to doing for kind of the future. So that's the agenda for today. Won't spend a bunch of time there. So worst part of the presentation, like I said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who we are, because I think that it helps to understand a little bit about Elite SEM and some of the struggles that we may have had that will help you, hopefully, as marketers and what we've done in terms of using Tableau. So we are a digital marketing agency. Despite what our name says, we do not do just paid search. We do everything from paid search, obviously, to email and CRM, paid social, analytics, obviously, marketing science, SEO, you name it. If it's in the digital world, we are doing it, and we are really proud of who we are as an agency. Culture is really, really important to us, and not just culture for the sake of saying the word culture, but actually living that out with our core values and our mission. So won't talk too much about this. What I really want to do is kind of set the stage for you on why we think and why we know that marketing data can suck. So some of you may have had, if you're on the agency side, or if you're an internal analyst or work for marketers kind of in general, somebody call you up and say something like this: hey, can you update that report for tomorrow? And inevitably, at some point, depending on where you sit, this may be the kind of reaction that you actually give to that response. Please, Lord, no, not for tomorrow. You don't understand how difficult this thing is. I can't just update the report for tomorrow, right? That's not how this works. So why do we have that happen, right? As marketers, as people who are working in marketing data, why is that the reaction that we get when it comes to, hey, can you just update that report for tomorrow? So I'm going to pull back just a second, and I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how typically folks might think of their marketing channels. You've got paid media, you've got earned media, you've got owned media. Data and strategy kind of sit over here to the side, and if you're an e-com, Amazon, are they friend or foe? We're not exactly sure. So this is a typical way that I think a lot of agencies and a lot of brands think about channels when it comes to marketing data and just kind of marketing in general. We look at things slightly differently. So we like to take a look and say, how can we take analytics, data, marketing science, wrap that in with an integrated media strategy, and have all of this channel level data that we can actually tell a holistic story about how your brand is actually performing. So when we go back, and we think about this guy right here, we understand when you think of not segmenting out paid media over here and earned or owned media over here, why this is kind of how you might feel as an analyst when you're looking at data and somebody just says, hey, can you please just update that report for me for tomorrow? We know about this landscape. You guys have probably all seen this. There's a Lumascape that's very similar, where there are so many marketing technologies and marketing platforms that we need to get data out of today that the reaction of that guy on the previous couple of slides makes complete sense, right? It's not an easy thing to do to get from 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, or in our case, over 100 data sources that we are actually trying to pull together on behalf of all of our clients in order to tell a cohesive story so that we can actually optimize media in an effective way, right? It's not about, here's my paid search budget, and here's how my paid search channel performed, and here's my paid social budget. That's not it, right? It's about the one-to-one marketing that we want to do for the brands that we work with, and actually connecting to customers in a one-to-one way. So being able to report on all of these hundreds of partners that we have to work with can obviously be challenging. So I want to set the stage with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the past and where we've been at Elite, talk about data, talk about Tableau, unicorns, oh my. So I want you to think of the data death march, and I'm going to walk through this with you. If you've been in data for a while, you know this death march. You have all of these data sources that we just talked about, over 100 that we use on a pretty regular basis. You have to go pull that data manually, right? Usually then it goes into our very favorite tool in the world, Microsoft Excel, which actually no one likes, but it's what we've got to use for the most part. And then we have to build these manual charts, right? That at the end then, we are taking that data, and where are we putting it? The place where data goes to die, PowerPoint. So we go through these painstakingly manual processes to put together analyses and put together reports that go someplace where you're never going to have any other further interaction, right? You're going to deliver this report. You're probably never going to hear anything about it again unless you screwed something up, in which case you'll absolutely hear about it. But this is the data death march, right? So I've been on Tableau since version 4, so I am dating myself there. I am not an expert. Please don't come ask me crazy questions. I've just been on it for a long time. But when we found Tableau, we were like, this is amazing. We don't have to worry about PowerPoint anymore. We can build these really sweet dashboards. But the problem is, we still have all these data sources. We still have to pull all of this data manually. We still have to put it into Excel. And we still have to now do some configuration of that data to be able to now see it in these sweet dashboards. So while Tableau solved a ton of problems and is probably solving a lot of problems for you with your companies today, it wasn't the exact answer to all of our dreams, especially with the amount of data sources that we have to work with. So we said, you know what? What we'll do instead is we'll go hire these unicorns, right? Where we've still got all of these data sources, but we're going to tell them to build and code into the APIs, right? And they're going to dump all that data into these flat files or into tables in SQL. Then those same people, we actually want them to organize all of that data into these master dashboard ready files. And then we want those same exact people to also build the dashboards. And oh, by the way, after you build them, we actually want you to be able to strategically analyze that data and deliver value for our clients. I am here to tell you, by and large, these people do not exist, right? If you are someone who says, I do all of these, I am the best at all of these, I am hiring, please come see me. But what we found is that it's very, very difficult to find a single person who can do all of these things and do them very well. Some people may be able to code a little bit, build some decent dashboards, and then deliver great insight and value. But it doesn't really cut it when you're trying to, at an enterprise organization like ours, serving over 500 clients, do this at scale. It just doesn't work. So I want to give you some numbers. This number on the screen today is an analysis that we did on how much time yearly our agency was spending reporting in hours. So 156,000 hours we were spending doing all of the things that I just talked about previously on those slides. Of this is what the breakout actually looked like. 80% of our time was spent just getting the data ready to actually do the analysis. If you are a marketer, you understand this. If you have more than one channel of data, you understand this, right? We said this just doesn't make any sense. There has to be a better way for us to take those hours and do more with those hours. So we said we want to take a different approach. What we want to do is we want to combine all of the data blending and the access and the best practices surrounding that and bring that data together. And we also want to be able to report and analyze at scale. Those are the two main objectives that we have so that we can actually do what we need to do for our clients and get away from those numbers that I just talked about. So how are we doing this? Before I go there, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how we think about kind of the 4 levels of maturity and insight. And I think this helps frame this a little bit. So you can obviously see what's on the screen. I don't have to explain it to you. You'll be able to read as I'm voicing this over. What we were trying to accomplish previously over 5-6 years is really all this stuff on the left, but it's just reporting, right? This is the what happened. This is the getting all of the data together to be able to report on it in these really sweet dashboards. That's the what happened. We absolutely need to do that. We want to do this at scale for our customers. But we also want to be able to understand on the right, which is true analytics, of the what to do, right? Being able to target more effectively, being able to predict, and not just say, here's what happened and why, but here's what we actually need to do, and here's how we're going to go there, right? So I wanted to pull that back because I think it's important to understand the distinction before we move in to the present and explain to you guys where we are today. So we still have those hundreds of data sources that I talked about earlier. And what we did was we went out and we found an amazing partner. It's a company called Channelmix. Elite Analytics is the name of the company. They have a tool called Channelmix. They're helping us with the data aggregation right now, where we're doing these 4 things. We're bringing all of the data together from all of our data sources in every channel possible. We're monitoring that data, very crucial, because we want to make sure we understand if a refresh fails, if an API fails, somebody needs to know, right? We can't wait until a client opens up a report or a channel team member opens up a report and they say, hey, I don't have any data for yesterday, right? That's just not going to be an effective way for us to maintain business. We want to have data preparation and management as a piece of this. And we want to have data that's analysis ready, right? That we don't have to do a ton of further manipulation to, with some exceptions, in order to actually get to where we want. And then from there, we want to get into the reporting and insights, where we can automate our dashboards in a scalable way. We can do that with giving value to our customers, and we can do it with flexible analysis and insights. And another company that's helped us out with some things called Playfair Data, check them out as well. They've helped us build a couple of dashboards and prototype that have been really great for us. So that's how we wanted to get to faster insight. Before we do that, I want to talk to you guys and just show you a little bit about Tableau Prep. Raise your hand, just by show of hands. How many is your organization using Tableau Prep? Raise your hand if yes. Those of you that said no, do, right? If you have a Tableau desktop license, you have a Tableau Prep key. Comes free with every creator license. I highly encourage you to do it. I'm going to show you some of the things that we've done in a very basic level that are going to blow your mind a little bit. So this is Tableau Prep. You guys have probably seen various demos of this throughout the conference and some different things. Some of you are probably like, I don't really know how this applies to me, especially if you're a marketer. There's oftentimes at the Tableau conference not a ton of marketing specific information to be able to share. So I want to share with you how we as marketers are using Tableau Prep. This is a file that is simply looking at data out of AdWords with some impression share information that is also looking at overlap rates, top of the page. It's basically how are we stacking up against our competitors. This data is not automatable out of any of the AdWords APIs, nor is it something that you can just, unless you know how to code, get scheduled to your email and then just pull that data out. So there's a lot of manual work that goes into this. And when it comes in, it has my very favorite thing in the world, unusable header rows that don't allow us to actually analyze the data until we get rid of them. So there's a lot of weird things in this data. I can't really access it via an API. I don't have anything, I have a lot of cleanup that I need to do. It doesn't necessarily match a lot of the things that, that we need it to with our current data set. So what I want to do is I just want to focus in here on the left-hand side. So these are some of the changes that we made within Tableau Prep that allow this data to actually now be analyzed in a more effective way. I won't go through all of them, but I want to exclude display from this. We run Google Display Network ads through AdWords as well. We want to exclude anything that's display because this is just paid search data that we want to look at. If there are nulls in the data set, I want to exclude those because I don't want it dirtying up my data, right? I want to take my date and I want to actually change it because for whatever reason, when dates come in here, they give you year, month, day, as opposed to month, year, day, or day, month, year. I can't talk properly today either. So we wanted to be able to flip that, right? These are all steps that are absolutely doable in Excel. We know that. But it's such a pain to do it in Excel when we could actually build out a workflow that's very simple. You'll see if I zoom back out here in a second, there's only one thing that we're doing to this file. We're just cleaning it. But we're cleaning it in a way that's repeatable, and now with some new stuff that's coming with Tableau Prep, it's going to be automated fully within Tableau Server. So this data, again, not available anywhere else, but we're using things that are built into Tableau in order to get us where we need to go so that we can actually move forward with that. So I wanted to show you just this is a very basic example of some of the value that Tableau has provided back to us. A more complex example, this one. We actually used this as a proof of concept before we went to Elite with, hey, we know we need to get some data together. We think it looks like this, but we're not exactly sure. And if you've ever gone down the road of getting multiple data sources together, only to get to the end and realize I can't analyze the data in the way that I need to, this allowed us to build a workflow that then we could go back to the folks at Elite and with the Channel Mix tool and say, we know exactly what we want and here's how we want to get there. Right? So from a very simple, just clean it, to a very complex, this is literally GA data. It's a file that we get automatically delivered via email to the Channel Mix platform through a box.com email address. And it's some display spend data that's customized because we have a variable CPM with one of our display partners. They are a giant pain in my ass. I love you if you're listening, but you're a pain in my ass. So we built this flow to be able to kind of conceptualize and proof of concept what we needed to do here. So I'm going to own up to something, and I'm going to tell you that this that you are seeing on your screen right now is actually a report that my company delivered to a client. And if you have reporting like this today, know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. This is obviously not pretty. This is in Excel. It's not interactive. It gives you a lot of information, a lot of tables of data to be able to talk through what's happening here, a little bit of trending information at the top. But by and large, all I'm focusing on here is return on ad spend and sales and not much else. So what we wanted to do was, going back to this number here, this report actually was an output of that 156,000 hours. So God help us, we have moved in a better direction. And I want to show you a little bit about what that actually means. So I'm going to pop into Tableau. I'm going to have to stand behind the podium, so I'm sorry for that. So we have a lot of e-commerce clients, and we also have a lot of B2B clients, and a lot of B2C that are not e-commerce. And what we decided that we wanted to do was build a dashboard for every e-com client, right? That as soon as you come on to working with Elite, literally the second day that you start working with us, as soon as we can start ingesting your data from either AdWords, Kenshu, Marin, DoubleClick, whatever data source it is that you're looking at, we can get that into our data lake, and we can now, literally the second day that you're on with us after you've launched, have this report for you. That is significantly faster and significantly better than what we were ever doing before. And I'm going to walk you through some of the cool things that we built into this report and with some of our friends at Playfair Data that they helped us with that allows for kind of ultimate flexibility for both our clients and for our internal teams to be able to leverage. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is this gear icon up here on the top left. I'm so excited from devs on stage this morning. If you were not there, one of the things that they're actually adding in is the ability to have a tray similar to this, viewable or not viewable. We had to hack our way into this one. So I'm really excited that that's actually coming to where we'll be able to include this in all of our reports without as much manual work as we had to put into it. But with this little gear icon, what you can actually see here is I can choose the client profile. I can change the week start. If I asked how many of you guys had your day of week start on a Monday versus a Sunday versus a Saturday, it's different for every client, as you can imagine. So we needed to be able to have clients either choose their own day of week start, or our internal teams, as they're looking at this data, also be able to do the same type of thing. We wanted to give folks the ability to change the name if they didn't want it to be called executive performance, then it could be called something else. We also gave them the ability, we kind of have two zones here, the top zone with all of these KPIs and the bottom zone, where if I wanted to change this from line charts to area charts, then I have the ability to do that as an end user without us having to use Tableau as a design software to do so. So I'm not going to get into too much here. All of these filters that we've built in, month to date, year to date, last full week, right? Custom date ranges. We want to compare those either to the previous period or the previous year. These are all things that are normal in the marketing world, but gives ultimate interactivity to our end user, whether that be our internal teams or our client, to understand what's happening with their data. Right? So if I'm looking right now and I say month to date compared to the previous period, I can see that I spent more, I had less impressions, my clicks went up, et cetera, et cetera. We've color coded a few of the up and down arrows and given you kind of some spark lines to look at here. But I really love what we did at the bottom, which is we had a common request both from clients and internal teams that said, hey, I'd love to be able to have kind of a dual axis chart, even though I'm not a huge fan of dual axis charts for many reasons, which I won't get into. But I want to compare two metrics to each other, and I would like to have flexibility to do that. Kind of one of the feedback pieces we got was any way that I want. And we're like, cool, sounds great, we can do that for you. So what we actually did was we built that, right? So if in this case I said, I want to actually compare return on ad spend to, let's say, average order value. I want to do this by the last 36 weeks. And I want to trend this out by week. And this gives me some information, but I think I actually want to break this down by brand versus non-brand. So now I've given an end user very, very quickly the ability to take a look and ask a question of their data, right? I want to understand what happened in the last 36 weeks, brand versus non-brand, looking at return on ad spend and average order value. Not rocket science, but at least now I've given somebody, instead of that ugly, god-awful Excel workbook I was looking at before, the ability to do something with their data and ask questions. And we've built in tooltips, some basic ones in this case where we're just calculating for them the percent change week over week or period over period, depending on what that is. Excuse me. So this is one way that we're trying to provide value. We also have tabs in here for device and campaign. So if I wanted to get into the device side of things, and a lot of the filters carry over, and I wanted to be able to see, is device causing a spike or a dip in some of the things that I'm looking at, then we have the ability to do that. Same thing at the campaign level. What I'm really proud of, though, is how we built pacing. And I don't care if you rip this off. It's totally fine with me. Pacing is obviously, for a marketer's perspective, one of, if not the most important things that we have to look at. We at the agency side are entrusted with making sure that the dollars that you allow us to spend for your brands are actually the dollars that we spend. We don't want to give credits because we overspend. We don't want to underspend and leave money on the table when that money could have been spent for you to actually get more revenue or get more leads or more sales or whatever it might be. So what we've built in here is the ability to see pacing. This updates every single day, this entire report, automatically. And every day I know how I'm pacing. And not only do I understand what percentage I'm pacing to, But I can now, as a marketer on the channel side, understand what's my daily run rate that I need to go back and adjust my bid caps for, right? If I know that normally I've been spending, or my budget was around $360 a day, if I'm overspending or underspending, what do I need to spend going forward, right? And I can see it broken out on a daily basis just to understand. And this is a linear budget. We actually have much, much more advanced budgeting that we use for most of our clients, where we use the historical data to actually suggest budgets based off of day of week, more specifically. So if Saturday and Sunday we need to budget less, we don't want just a flat budget line that goes all the way across. But this is one of the things that we've been able to do for our clients now that we've got our data in a good spot, that we think is making a really big difference for those that are able to use this so far. So I'm going to come back in here. So remember this number. The clients that we have moved over from our kind of old legacy way, and we still have a long way to go. We do not have every single client on the new systems that we want. We're in progress. This number went from this to this by centralizing our data, by building scalable, repeatable ways to analyze that data, and has significantly reduced, for those brands that are using this, our channel team and analyst team time in gathering and preparing that data. And now we are able to spend, I'm really happy to say, the bulk of our team time actually analyzing that data and developing strategies on how we can better spend the dollars out into the market for our clients. So we could absolutely have not done this without the partners that we have at Elite, and absolutely have not done this without Tableau. We investigated I've been at Elite for about 14 months. We started this project my first week there. So 14 months, we went from nothing to now this. And this is not me doing this. This is our great team that we have at Elite that's doing this with us. And it is something that has made a shift in the way that we actually can operate as a business. And when I say a shift, I don't say that word just using it to use it. It literally is changing the way that we do business. So what does the future mean? I want to talk to you about some of the things that now that we're centralizing some of our data, now that we're using Tableau, what is it that we are actually able to do with that data? So one of the things is predictive. We have a marketing science division. Tableau has forecasting baked in that you can do on a pretty advanced basis or a pretty basic basis if you want to. This example here is actually real data. That's a display forecast. And we were able to pull in all of these different data sources and forecast out for the next six months, I think, 9 months, whatever we looked at the time, because we had all the data together, what this actually might look like for our clients. So when they come to us and say, hey, it's 2019 planning time, we're already prepared because we've got data to say, here's what next year looks like based off of the last 2-3 years worth of data that we've got available. But we're doing this as a one-off, but what we want to do is actually get to where we build in predictive at scale. If I have a data warehouse and I have models that I know work for being able to do time series modeling, and you don't have to be a data scientist to understand time series modeling, right? What happened in the past impacts what could happen in the future, all things being equal. Being able to put forecasting in to every single report that we build, regardless of the channel, regardless of the data that's available to us. We're gonna have some incompletes because we're not gonna have a ton of historical data for all of our clients, we get that. But being able to do that at scale is huge, right? We're really excited about that. We've got some stuff that's in alpha right now, working on this for 2019. Another thing that we're doing is building in specifically for our clients, because they're the ones who ask us for these things. And so just like Tableau listens to us as a community, we listen to our clients. And if they say, you know, if I had more money to give you, what would that actually look like, right? Well, in this example, we said if we wanted to look at sales, expecting, let's say, a 6% churn rate and 60% new business growth over a certain time period, what would my sales actually look like? So I've got my actuals, I've got my forecasts, and we can build this in because we've got all this historical data now, and our clients and our internal teams can come in and change these numbers. So if I don't want it to be 60% new business and 6% churn, I want it to be 50% and 2%, that's fine. So kind of some what-if analyses based off of all of the data that we have available to us. This is another thing that we're getting ready to launch pretty soon internally. How many of you guys knew that if you use Tableau Server or Tableau Online, that you can actually hook into text messaging? You know about alerting if you've used Tableau Online or Tableau Server, where you can schedule emails, right, to be delivered when you hit a certain threshold. They talked about it a little bit this morning at Devs on Stage. We're going to actually hook into a third-party SMS service. This is going to be something that we can roll out to our clients so that when we exceed a return on ad spend number, they can get alerted immediately, right? If we screw something up and they want to set a lower threshold where we don't do something well, that can happen as well. And the same thing for our internal teams, right? We want to know if we have a spike in spend or a dip in spend or a spike in different metrics, and we all know that we have phones with us all the time, but how many emails do you have in your email box right now? Right? Things get lost. So we're going to hook into this from a dashboarding perspective. The other way that we're going to do this, and this is going to look very similar, but the messaging is going to change, is actually on the back end for our engineering team. When extracts fail, we don't necessarily want there to be just an email that kicks off saying that the extract failed, but I might need to take immediate action on that. So let's text our engineering team so that they know, hey, this display extract failed. We need to go fix it, right? So some cool things that we're going to do here. Another thing we've got, and this is kind of the last one that you'll see on here, is this certain workbook that the client said that they absolutely had to have has not been looked at in 60 days, right? All right, let's have a conversation now, right? Not a scolding conversation, but a conversation of, hey, I noticed that you guys haven't really looked at this data in a while. Is there something that we could provide that would be more valuable, or should we just remove this because we don't want to clutter up your day? And we can have that conversation, and it's a good jumping off point for us to do so. This is another one. So with some of the services that are out there today, this is a little bit more novelty, but maybe not for some of you. Being able to ask Cortana or Alexa or Siri, hey, how much did I spend yesterday in paid search? How much did I spend yesterday in paid social? We actually have all of that data. With a lot of the new NLP stuff that's coming out with Tableau, we can leverage that, push that out into any of these variations of in-home speaker systems and tools, and now be able to provide that to our clients, provide that to our internal teams. So before your day even starts, before you have to open up your email, before you have to look and see what your dashboard says happened yesterday, you've got that 8:30 a.m. meeting where somebody's going to ask you how things did last week, and you don't want to stay up until midnight the night before trying to figure it out. Just ask, right? Again, little novelty, but some practical value, we think, as well. So back to the agenda. I hope that all of these things I covered in a way that makes sense to you guys. I went through it a little bit quickly because I wanted to make sure to leave plenty of time for questions. I actually have one of my good friends, Josh Shirley, who's going to come up, who works with us at Elite Analytics and with the Channel Mix team. So if you have any specific questions about Channel Mix, we can answer those. But that's my presentation for today. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll answer any and all questions that you've got right now.
Thanks, Andrew. Hey.
Yes.
If you're willing to divulge, can you tell us more about how you made that comparison, the time period comparison? We've tried to do that.
You're talking about kind of at the bottom of the one report, the time period comparison with the breakouts. So there's a few parameters that are in there driving that. It's by and large, I got to think about this. There's 3 different parameters that are actually driving that. There's one that's constant for the choosing of the metrics. That's kind of universal. That's a fairly easy one to be able to choose. The other 3 that come after that, I think, are very specific to that individual chart. I can talk to you a little bit more after we could actually maybe even look at it a little bit. So, yes.
We've done something very similar at our agency in terms of scaling
Good question. So the question was around how many people do we have developing dashboards? So one of the things I didn't really talk about because it didn't really fit in today, we kind of have two work streams for our clients. We have these templated ones that I showed today that everybody has access to as soon as you start working with us. If you're paying for analytics services with us, all of your reporting is bespoke. It's customized for exactly what you need to have as a part of your organization because we know templates aren't going to cut it for everybody, right? I'm explaining those two work streams because we have two BI folks who kind of work on the templating side. We have 15 analysts that are creating, sorry, that's not true. 3 of those are managers. So we've got 12 analysts who are creating currently bespoke reporting for all of our clients across the organization. So less than 20 people. Right now, that number represents about 350. We just had an acquisition last month where we're significantly higher than that, but yep. Other questions? Yeah.
We have all of our social integrations to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And Any suggestions for if we really should go for sort of on-prem Tableau Prep?
All of our data is in the cloud. So it's segmented and cordoned off in a way that makes sense for our clients. So we're not overlapping client data with other client data in that way. We don't have anything on-prem. We're using AWS as the infrastructure that we use, Redshift, and then SQL tables built on top of that. So I think it really depends on what needs you have to do that, right? We didn't start with having every single 160 paid search clients, data together immediately. That was not our first focus. We went one client at a time for a few clients in order to kind of test the waters and work with the channel mix folks to figure out exactly what was going to be the best for us. And then we dove in full steam ahead. So I think there's a number of different ways to do it. If you're relying on kind of some of the native data sources, whether that be not native necessarily, but like using web data connectors through Tableau or using the APIs through Google Analytics or things of that nature, there's limitations there that not getting that data hardened into like SQL tables can create some challenges, right? But I would say start small. Do not go like, I want to go to the biggest thing possible that's going to have the biggest impact because it's probably not going to work and it's going to take forever. But starting with one of the smaller ones and seeing if it makes sense, right? Do we want to put more investment into this to harden all of these or not? Other questions? Back here, then over here.
How long do you think you get to the stage of where you show the future?
How long before we can get to the future? I think we've got it kind of roadmapped out in phases. So I kind of put them in the order that we're trying to phase them in, right? So the predictive at scale for paid search we'll have before the end of Q1. From the kind of if-then analysis stuff, we'll probably have, that's going to be Q3 probably, that we can actually do that at scale. We can do that today one-offs, right? If you're getting bespoke reporting for us, we can build that in and that's easy for us to do today. Relative to doing it at scale, obviously. So the Alexa stuff, we're going to wait probably close to a year for that because we want to see how the NLP stuff pans out because maybe it's not necessary, especially with the improvements that are coming to the mobile app, where if we can actually query the data through the mobile app with NLP, we may not need to go the Alexa, Siri, Cortana route as quickly. Over here, yeah.
I'm curious about your work setup. Like, do you have a separate team for the data aggregation and preparation? And do you have another team for dashboarding?
Yeah, great question. So the question was around like, do we have kind of a data and aggregation team and then a dashboarding team? So yes and no, kind of the two work streams that I talked about with like kind of the analyst and insight team building the bespoke reports, they work really closely with our data services team. All of our engineers, they work really closely with the folks at Elite to make sure that what they need kind of customized, specific for that client, is done in a way that's right for that client, right? The other side of this with kind of what we're doing with all of the clients at scale, that's our data services team, and again, the folks at Elite that are really helping with the heavy lifting there. But we have, daily sprints on our side. Same thing on the Elite side where there's stuff happening all the time with the data. And then our internal teams have weekly touch bases with our analytics, analyst team to make sure that what's being passed back and forth is communicated effectively and correctly. So we do have a little bit of a separation of church and state, but it's really, really closely tied together. So,
And one more question.
yeah.
Like, how long does it take for you to decide to clean data and to create dashboards for each client?
Yeah, so I would say for our custom, sorry, Josh, for our custom stuff, the bespoke stuff's about, we kind of quote 6 to 8 weeks, right? And the reason we do that is because we go through an entire discovery phase with our client to make sure that what we are creating that's custom is exactly what they need. There is absolutely nothing worse, and I encourage all of you, if you go through this process either internally with your brands or externally if you have clients, really get the discovery phase hammered out, process built. Because there's nothing worse than going through and building something, then requirements changing, and now you have to go change the data structure to actually fit the requirements. So 6 or so weeks is kind of our average right now for the bespoke stuff. The paid search stuff that we just kind of stood up recently at scale, it's literally 2 days. Like the API calls are already happening every day, so as soon as we have a new account that pops in, the data starts getting pulled in, and it's immediate. Yep. Yes?
I have a business question.
Sure.
This obviously adds a lot of value to customers. How effective have you been able to extract that value?
Really, really good question. I'm actually very glad that you asked that question. This is something I talk about a lot, but I wasn't going to bring it up here because life, I don't know. The best way for me to explain that is the customers that are stickier with us as an agency are the ones that we are taking full advantage of the process that we're building. That value that we provide back out, we've obviously quantified it in terms of here's what we were doing and here's now what we're doing. So that 80% of time that we now have available, what does that actually mean? We quantify and pull that back into customers that are in that 80% now, stay with us longer, generally see a better, not results just from a results perspective, right? But because we're now spending more time there, the ability for those clients to see greater return on their investment, or the way we kind of measure it is like, are they giving more money into the channels that we manage in order to more effectively do it for them? That's one of the ways that we tend to look at it. So it doesn't really answer your question, but I can't get into hard numbers with you, unfortunately. But I would say that by moving away from the old way of doing things now into this new way, clients stay with us longer. We do client NPS scores as well. Our client NPS scores are significantly higher this year than they were last year. They've always been very high, but those clients that have seen this influx of reporting and data are through the roof ecstatic with what we're providing.
But you're not charging a fee.
We charge a fee for the bespoke reporting. We do not for the templated reporting. Correct. It's baked in. Yes?
If you were to insource the work from Inhouse, how big a team would you need? I'm trying to.
That's a really good question.
I want to make a pitch in front
Yep.
of my C-suite. What's the spend, and how do you make a decision whether to go your own expertise in-house versus going with it?
Great question. So the question was around how do you know whether to build this in-house or to use a partner like Elite to do this, right? We did some of this analysis up front before we actually went down the road with these fine folks and with Tableau. We did this for all data partners that we were vetting at the time. So we were looking, I think, at 6 of the major players in the space. Excuse me. If we were not to have gone with Elite, we would have at minimum needed 5 people. We would have needed engineers, QA, and solutions architecture to start with, a leader to oversee that, and that was like bare bones, right? And we really probably needed like an analyst of some kind that was going to kind of be more of a business analyst and a process mover more than anything. So that was the minimum. As we've scaled, those numbers, as you can imagine, would need to scale accordingly. But in working with these guys, we throw things over the fence, and I do this all the time, and they know this, and so I can say this out loud. I just like throw bombs in the middle of things and walk away, and then they figure it out. Like, It's a fantastic, not that part of our relationship, but it's a fantastic relationship because the value that we're able to glean out of the partnership allows me to focus my time elsewhere and building other parts of the division. And for our C-suite and our board to know, like, that's handled, right? We don't have to worry about that. Doesn't mean that we don't still go out and hire some of those people, right? We're hiring on the data side all the time because our complexity of the data continues to grow in addition to the volume, and so we've got to have some people to help with that. Yep. Other questions? Yes?
Talking about the bombs that you're throwing at
Yep.
analytics. So when something changes and you have to answer any question, obviously it's any analysis usually results in, right? And you need new dimensions, new variables to, and then all of a sudden your data model changes, right? And so you have to be agile. How does that work? How long does it take? Are there any challenges along the way? I guess a question for you guys.
Yeah, for us, it's a little dependent on a couple of things. One, have we hardened some of that data source before that maybe for a different client that we've already got all the connections built out and now it's just, hey, the requirements change for this client. We can actually leverage the exact same technology and API calls and everything that we built over here and just pull it over. That can happen. There are tools built into the channel mix software that I can get data within 30 minutes, right? Depending on what now data I'm requesting, if it's been pulled and hardened before. So there's that side of it. If it is fully custom, right? We've built into the APIs, but now we need to like really bring this data back to life in a whole new way. We don't treat it necessarily as a new project, but we try and go back and understand, can we leverage some of what we've built today, or do we have to go completely from scratch again? And it varies, but I would say maybe max like 10 business days if we've built everything out, right? Like if we have to build a new API connection, different conversation. But in the interim, one of the great services that is a part of this is we can get scheduled reports out of whatever the engines are delivered to a box.com email address that then gets pulled into a SQL table that while we're building the API, we are building the API, we're still able to leverage that data and not have to wait for it, right? And because we work with some ridiculous data sources, that makes a big difference. So I would say as quickly as 30 minutes, otherwise 2 weeks at most, right? Unless it's like crazy complex.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to what Andrew just said is that we operate with him and particularly our other agency clients with context in, you know, what he needs it for and when the deadline in front of the client is. And you know what clients are coming up for review, and all those different types of things we have to care about. We have to get involved in. So we have to prioritize those things for everybody. But yeah, it definitely depends on the heftiness of the request. It can be very fast, or it can take a little bit of time.
The other thing I'll say, just so, and I know there's two questions, I think one here and one here. One of the things that we can do with these guys is kind of create priority tickets. So where I come in and drop grenades are like, I need this thing yesterday. So then we can jump the line, right? So there may be a queue of all of these things that we're working on. And if this is the need for the agency, we can jump the line and the team will just pivot and start working on all the new stuff.
You prioritize on your end, and then you guys also.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. Back here, yep.
Yeah, first just want to say great presentation.
Thank you.
The best one I've seen so far.
Thank you, appreciate that. You can keep talking in that way if you want to. That's totally fine. Somebody recording this? Sorry.
My question might be maybe for Josh, but you said something about like AdWords data, you weren't able to get an API to deliver what you really needed. I'm actually on a project trying to kind of do the same thing. I just wondered if there's any, like how are you actually getting the data if you're not using an API?
Yeah, so right now with that impression share data specifically, it's just scheduled reports. So unfortunately, that's the best way for us to do it. That data is more project-based as well. We're not every day looking at like impression share updates, and you know, it's really more of a maybe once every other week we'll kind of reevaluate that. And we do that because our internal channel teams, they can just go into AdWords on a daily basis and see what the impression share changes look like, right? That's super easy for them to do. One of the things that we worked with these guys on, you know, we have a lot of requests. We have a lot of data that we're trying to process. One of the things that we are not trying to do is rebuild AdWords in Tableau, right? We don't look at keyword data that much in Tableau. The lift, we have some clients that have 45 million keywords. There's absolutely no way that it would make sense for us to bring all of that data in and process it and analyze it within Tableau. We'll do it as projects, but not on a daily ongoing basis. Same type of thing with this impression data.
I'd just say that if you're working on a process like this for yourself, not to be API dependent for reasons like that. So there's a lot of other ways you can get data as automated as possible. And in this example, it's a scheduled report. Just depends on the data source.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not far off in this case. We deal with that as well with a lot of ad servers, particularly Seismic. A lot of people know that's probably a pain in the ass to get data out of. Yes, and so basically we have more of a process like what you described, where we'll schedule something out and write an importer to where it lands. And so we have kind of a data capture mechanism that we've built out for issues like that.
There was one back here, yep. And then we'll come up here.
For Josh, Andrew mentioned that your team did a lot of the heavy lifting to get them to where they are today. Can you go into more specifics of what the heavy lifting was?
Yeah, good question. So the question was just about the different types of heavy lifting that we have to do. And really, it kind of starts with the strategy that Andrew's trying to employ, right? So he wants to develop an analytics practice at his agency that has a purpose, that goes beyond doing the work every day. And so we first have to kind of understand that. And then it comes to building out a process and understanding the landscape of the data that he's in. What particular pieces of his ecosystem do we have? What do we not have and therefore need to go build so that we can have a starting field of data sources that will work for the most clients? If you're a brand, same type of deal, but services the most business lines or internal stakeholders for your reporting. So once we understand that, we basically develop a repeatable process for getting that data out, whether it's API scheduled or if it's just, sometimes it's a hand crank deal because we're marketers and we deal with things like TV post logs and stuff like that. And we basically develop a process of integrating that data. And that's the first heavy lifting job is data aggregation. Heavy lifting number 2 is a place to put it. So we decide that based on what the client needs. In Andrew's case, we're putting everything on Amazon Redshift, which is one of the fastest and safest data stores in the world. And it works for them. And so we have that there. It's warehoused. We run a lot of scripts on the data to make sure that it stays healthy, right? So things break all the time. We monitor that data all the time and make sure it's okay. If there is a problem, it tells us about that. So we have a developer going out and fixing that. So Andrew doesn't have to pull strategists off the line to try and figure that stuff out. And that's step 2. And then finally, step 3 is really putting the data together. So when Andrew says, I'm going to go drop a bomb on you guys, usually the bomb is, I'd like to put all this data together in a really complex way. And we understand the business requirements for that. So just like Andrew demands from his clients that he gets very clear requirements for what they want, we hold Andrew and his team to that same standard as best we can. And basically, when we get things back from them, we understand the business context of why that data needs to be strung together. And we can build them a data set. You might call it a data mart, different places inside the database for him to go and get so that they have that construct ready to go for the reporting that they want to do. So 3 lanes of heavy lifting there: aggregation, management, and utilization.
I'll also just add quickly that part of what Josh is talking about, I think he probably undersells what the value is that we get out of that. So the strategy sessions that we have, either when we're standing up brand new data sets, whether that be kind of, hey, we're planning for 2019, what's the roadmap look like? We get a lot of feedback on what we think we want to do that from a data perspective can be said to us in like let's rethink that a little bit. And here's why we think we should rethink that. It's not just a, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and that mentality. It's very much a collaborative conversation. And we've gone down the road of things where once we started down the road, we all realized this isn't the best way to go, and we've stopped and course corrected because we have that kind of a relationship where they are fine pushing back on me and being like, this doesn't make sense, and here's why it doesn't make sense. That's what I would want and expect from if we built this out internally, and we get that from a partner like these guys. So, question here? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might have partially answered this, but have you ever had a client who has print marketing, and what
Absolutely.
are the challenges that you find doing that? I feel like you sort of covered that one.
Yeah, so the question was around print, and like any of those, I'm going to call them offline channels. It could be print, it could be out of home, it could be billboards, it could be TV, right? Which all of those are data sources that as long as we get the data that we need, we can bring it into the same warehousing that we're looking at today, right? So we just did some data, and we didn't bring this into the warehouse because we didn't need to, but we did some data for a client that was doing print, and we wanted to understand what was the digital impact to the print that actually dropped. So we got the geos, we got the drop dates, we got the in-home dates, and then we started measuring branded search impressions, volume change comparatively year over year to last year when they were not running in those markets, and we were able to measure the impact of that. So if we knew that this was something consistently that we needed to report on or show like, hey, we saw a spike in, we do this with TV all the time, right? We saw a spike last Thursday in, clicks. I mean, I would never say just clicks. I don't know why that just came to my head, so I apologize. I'm not a bad marketer, I promise. But if we wanted to look at something like that, then we've got all that data. It's being ingested. We can do flat files, emailed in and automated through box.com. We can, like Josh said, kind of crank it out by hand if we have to and email them a file and it'll get manually uploaded. But we do that with TV a lot where we're trying to analyze without like TV attribution, what the impact is of TV in the markets by spot, right? So we'll get down even to like when How to Get Away with Murder runs, we're seeing big spikes, but only on the first week because after that, nobody cares to watch your commercial anymore, right? Which does happen, by the way, if you're ever looking to buy How to Get Away with Murder, first week spike, everything else afterwards. I've never seen more than a 1 week spike. So take that back if you're a TV person. But yeah, it's a relatively seamless process. It's not as easy as like just me clicking and now getting the data, like for some of the digital sources, but it's a very easy process for our teams. Yeah. 2 here, go 1, 2.
Impressive, obviously. What kind of successes have you seen with such a large client base as far as clients that are providing products that are B2B versus B2C?
Great question. So B2B versus B2C. So the e-com dashboard that I showed you there, we basically have, I want to say it's 4 or 5 different versions of that where we change out the metrics and some of the nomenclature based off of the business type. So if you're an e-com client, you'll get an e-com dashboard. If you're a lead gen client, you're getting a lead gen dashboard where the metrics change. We're not looking at ROAS and average order value. We're looking at cost per acquisition or cost per lead and conversion rate and things like that. So we have, like I said, we have brands across the spectrum. The value we end up seeing is the same regardless of the vertical that you kind of reside in. The data is the data, right? If you're a lead generation one, B2B or B2C versus the other side of e-com, there's just more levers to pull on the e-com side. So we give you more data. I think there's 14 data sources in the e-com reports and 10 or 12 in the lead gen, B2B, B2C space because it just makes sense, right? We also have some B2C that are lead gen with some very specific needs around like, let's say for instance, maybe you're a hospital system or a college or university where you've got multiple lines of business that you're actually responsible for marketing the whole business. We give you an extra tab of data to be able to understand how are my business lines actually performing from a marketing perspective, not just the rolled up or campaign level view or device level view that I would have shown you guys today. So, yes. Yes.
So I'm curious from like a change management perspective, how much of your clients, like brands, actually want to use this themselves to take action?
Yep.
Or are they either not data people or kind of overwhelmed and say, beautiful, like glad you're looking at it, you do the insights and just tell us what to do?
Yeah, great question. So really it's around how much of the dashboards and reporting are clients wanting to take and own themselves versus them just saying, this is great, but you just do it. Did I get that right? Okay. So I would say that to start, it's much more of the latter than the former, right? Well, the conversation that is had, though, is around what this means for the brand and why we want to do this. So we usually pose it to them in some hypotheticals, but also real-world examples that maybe have just happened for the brand, right? So one thing that was always a pet peeve of mine, and we no longer have to deal with this, is, and if you're on the brand side and you work with agencies, you've experienced this, so, and I'm not poo-pooing on other agencies because we were this agency. You might have your Tuesday meeting with your superiors that you have to talk about performance for last week. You don't get the report until Monday night at like 8 p.m. because your agency's like cranking it out trying to get it to you, and there's nothing that you can glean from that because your meeting is at 9 o'clock the next morning, right? So then the brands push back on the agencies and say, I need more insights. You don't really need more insights. You want more insights because your time is so constricted because you don't get your report till Monday at 8 p.m. Going through this process of bringing all of the data together allows that data Monday morning, first thing, you're in it. And now we have dialogues, right, via email and sometimes on calls where we're going through that thing prior to that Tuesday meeting and setting our clients up for success. We're still absolutely bringing insights to the table. We're never not going to do that. That's where the value really lies. The value is in the reporting to a degree, but if you don't know how to interpret it, then So the shift that we're seeing is more clients that then understand the value that it brings, and that's why we have these conversations and these questions. They want to do more with it. And so we'll start having conversations that instead of them being like, hey, I have a question about this insight, and could you tell me why the cost per click went down 4% for this individual keyword last week? And we're like, it doesn't matter. Like, it was $12. Like, right? And that's real, and that's okay, and that's important because somebody else is asking them that question. Now they know the answer, and they're also now saying, hey, would it be possible to something? And now we walk through very interesting use cases of how we can actually solve business problems instead of just solving reporting problems. So long answer, kind of rambled a little bit there, but I hope that that answers your question. So, yes?
For your templated reporting and your bespoke reporting, roughly what's the percentage of people that are on bespoke reporting?
As a percentage of total clients, let's just say paid search only, right? Every paid search client has access to the templated reports. We've got about, gotta think about that, 25%, no, not quite that much, because we have a lot of like mid-tier clients that just, they don't want the bespoke for whatever the reasons are. Yeah, I mean, we absolutely have had that happen, where we'll give a client kind of a basic report, and then they say, this is awesome, could we customize this? And then we say, sure, like let's bring you into this entirely different work stream, because not only we're gonna customize your reporting, we're gonna do incrementality studies with you, we're gonna do brand lift studies, we're gonna do more on the analytics side that's not just, here's better reporting than what you might currently have. We also have some clients that are just like, can I just pay you some money to get some better reports? I don't want to do anything else. We absolutely do that, and then 90% of the time they go, this is great, can we actually do more? And we're like, yes, we'll go back to the conversation we had 6 months ago when we were talking about this whole thing. So yeah, it's less than 25%, but yeah, I think that it absolutely ends up being a hook right into saying, I would like to do more of this, especially as we move down the predictive from a forecasting perspective. We have a marketing science team that does very detailed predictive analyses, like very specific modeling that's custom for your brands, right? That's not something we're gonna put into Tableau. It would not be a smart business decision, but it also would be not scalable because every brand is so different. So, any other questions? Yes?
So from the business perspective, passing on the cost of the Tableau licenses, because they all get it for free, right? So you're just passing on the costs of the licenses to the clients, just built into the price.
Yeah, it's actually as part of our fees. We want every client to have access to reporting, just like we would if we were like, every person at the company has a PowerPoint license, right? We don't charge our clients for the PowerPoint license that we use internally. We don't charge them for the Tableau license. We do cap it though, right? So if you're a brand that comes to us and you say, hey, we've got 80 locations nationwide. We'd like for every single one of them to have access. We're going to have a conversation because it's not going to be inexpensive for us to give you 80 licenses. We usually cap it a little bit on the spend that they're doing with us. And the more they're spending, the more obviously we have the ability to just give them whatever it is that they need. And there's some exceptions to that on both sides. We'll absolutely want to make sure that our clients are taken care of. And if that means that we give out 10 licenses for free, then we will if that's something we have to do.
Easy to sell internally?
That's a really good question. Was that easy to sell internally? I don't think it was hard to sell internally. If you look at it in aggregate and you say, hey, and I'm making up a number, this is not our actual number, just so you guys know. This is going to cost us $250,000 a year for licenses. That is not something we necessarily look at. We look at it on an individual client basis, and if we're like, hey, this is going to cost us, $200, $300, $500 a year, okay, right? That's fine for our clients. We want to make sure that they're taken care of, and this is the best way for us to give them the data that they need, right? Like I said to the gentleman earlier, our clients kind of like us more from an NPS perspective and stay with us longer when they have this data, so why would we not want to do something like that? Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We're actually a couple minutes over. I'm happy to talk to you if you want to afterwards. So thank you guys. Appreciate it again.